Tak 10 her s nekonečnou replayabilitou, které nemůžeme přestat hrát. Otazník. Do prdele, to je zase název tohle. Bože. Titulky, CZ. Výborně.
A lot of games nowadays are intended to be played forever, but it's not necessarily because they're replayable, it's because they're games as a service. And I don't want to talk about those today. I talk about those enough. Let's talk about something good. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on Game Ranks, 10 games with infinite replayability. Starting off with number 10, it's the Hitman trilogy, the World of Assassination. You know, 3 games with more...
Ježiš, kámo, tohle je taková pravda, ty vole. Tohle je taková pravda. Je pravda, že Hitman trilogie je ta nová, tak se opravdu dá hrát pořád dokola. A ona ta hra tě k tomu vlastně i nutí, protože ty dostáváš achievementy a gear za to, že procházíš ty mapy a zabíjíš ty cíle i různýma způsobama.
More than 20 maps, multiple game modes, and tons of challenges. And with the new Freelancer update, it's basically an infinite game with randomized targets, random loot drops, and tons of ways to kill your target. It's just a ton of content just in the basic campaign mode for Hitman, but that's the beginning. Yeah, you can spend hundreds of hours screwing around in standard levels, testing your assassination skills. And attempting every possible unique kill you can get, but there's so much more to these games now. So much more, it's kind of crazy. On top of the campaign, there's elusive targets, which are special one-time only assassins.
Ale strašně zábavný je i vidět třeba speedrunning komunitu, která se okolo Hitmana nějakým způsobem točí, protože ona, ta komunita, pořád nachází nový a nový mechaniky, což mi přijde neuvěřitelný. Doteďka si myslím, že Hitman trilogie je docela underrated titul, protože mi přijde, že to je jediná hra, která je v podobném žánru a která je 10 z 10. Že ten bundle, který z toho udělali, té trilogie a freelancer módu, tak je neskutečný.
Where you get minimal in-game assistance, contracts mode where you get your own custom scenarios and attempt ones built by other players. There's escalations which challenge you in unique ways. They mix up standard maps to be more difficult or limit your options. That's a lot, but then they throw in the new freelancer mode, which has been dominated my time with the game. It turns the game basically into a roguelike, where you go on campaigns and take out randomly generated targets using a limited inventory. It's randomized, so it changes up how you play even more than usual. It's a fantastic mode that's completely free and adds a ton of replayability to an already basically infinitely replayable game.
Ciao, Marco.
And number 9 is Risk of Rain 2, a third-person roguelite shooter. It's extremely fun, it's highly addictive, and it's...
Krásně do Risk of Rain, prosím vás. Já jsem pořád akorát slyšel, že to je prej odlehčená, vlastně odlehčená inspirace pro Returnal. Takhle. Chápu to správně?
A pretty big challenge, honestly. But the thing that makes it infinitely replayable is the co-op. Playing games with a friend can make basically any game more fun, but when you take a game that's already good and throw in some really...
Je to tak, ale vývoje jsem to vykašlali. Jo, takže ta hra teďko je polomrtvá. To je škoda.
Multiplayer action. That's what keeps a game alive long past when you might individually get tired of it. The thing about this game is it's not really the most feature-rich or complex. It has a lot of items, and it's been getting solid updates for years. But what really makes it great is just how mechanically solid it is. It's a roguelite that is just incredibly fun to play. There's a lot of classes to pick from, tough bosses to fight, and it's still getting serious updates. In fact, there's an expansion coming out soon. This is one I haven't gotten a chance to highlight much in the past, so it's overdue for a mention. A great one to waste a lot of time on. And number 8 is Monster Hunter World. Now that it's exceptionally cheap and more people are playing it than ever, why not jump back into...
Já si přesně říkám, že tohle je hra, která mi potom zabije celý stream. Já když vidím, jak to hraje Asmongol, tak si úplně říkám, do prdele práce. Fakt bych chtěl být situace, kdyby lidi takováhle hra bavila na streamu. Prostě úplně kurva rád, ty vole. Fakt bych si to chtěl zahrát někdy tohle.
Monster Hunter World. What else is there to say about this one? It's great. The premise is simple, but it's crazy addictive. You hunt monsters. There's a lot of monsters. There's a lot of weapons. That's it. That's the game. That's Monster Hunter World. You'd think something that's basically a glorified boss rush would get old after a while, but it doesn't. The game keeps you on a hamster wheel, trying to get resources, build better armor, make weapons, take on the toughest hunts. And as someone who's finished the game completely, it's hard not to want to jump.
Mě tam strašně odrazuje ten asijský nádech, tak Je to japonská hra, že jo, jako to je těžký, ale mně přesně přijde, že tohle je, takhle, nehrál jsem to, nemůžu to hodnotit, ale přijde mi, že to je, jak kdyby někdo dělal hru úplně přesně pro mě. Prostě zabíjíš bose a zabíjíš ho 2 hodiny. Uděláš jednu chybu a jsi mrtvej. To je úplně přesně hra pro mě, ale říkám si ty vole, jako kdy se na tohle vrhnout, uvidím, no. Uvidíme, jaký bude tenhle rok.
Jump back in with a new
Možná tomu dám
character and
šanci.
try it out with different weapons and synergies. It's a ton of fun by yourself, and it's great with friends too. This game has been getting updated for years too. They've added so much extra crap to it, but it's just as straightforward and easy
Si zapni Vovko a tak Vovko taky letos plánuje. War Wi-Fi bude zajímavá.
to jump in as ever. Once you get used to the controls, I mean, there's not a lot else that you need to know. You go out, fight monsters, carve them up for resources, and do it again. What more you need? And number 7 is Vampire Survivors. The original is still one of the best. For a game meant to be played in bite-sized chunks,
Je pravda, že tahle hra toho změnila hodně, ale teda přiznám se, že po nějakých 50 hodinách taky to se přestalo bavit. Že jako ano, nahrál jsem toho ve Vampire Survivors spoustu, stačilo mi to a that's it, jo. A teďko je tu spousta jiných titulů, jako je třeba Brotato, kterými sedějí výrazně víc tím gameplayem a tou diverzitou zbraní, která v té hře je, ale je pořád pravda to, že jsem rád, že okolo tohohle vznikl nový žánr. A to je super.
just something incredibly addictive about it. The gameplay is about as basic as you can get. You don't even control your attacks. Your guy just attacks automatically, but it's so fun and satisfying to play. It's great. Seriously, as a chill-out game, there's very little better. It's not chock full of annoying microtransactions and ads like a lot of other casual games, and just to be frank, that's
Já si hlavně myslím, že tohle je úplně základní hra na Steam Deck. Že naprostá většina lidí, kteří tuhle hru hrajou příležitostně, taky hrajou na Steam Decku. A prý je i free verze na telefony, kterou jsem teda nehrál, ale slyšel jsem, že to existuje taky.
Fantastic. The game basically always drip feeds new content and unlockables, and it keeps things interesting, even as you're essentially just doing the same thing over and over again. You can tell the guy who made this worked in the gambling industry. He clearly knows all the tricks to keep the dopamine flowing. Just, he doesn't do it to be predatory, which is, I mean, just astounding in of itself. Somebody's like, yeah, I'm going to take all these concepts and make it so that it's just about having fun.
Tak nějak, no. Ale ta mapa za moc fun není.
I'm not going to actually take anything from the player. I'm not going to exploit them in any way. I'm just going to give them a thing that continually gets more and more fun. Like, seriously, can you imagine that type of mindset in one of the larger companies?
No hlavně jde o to, že tohle je jedna z her, která měla tak levný vývoj, že ti bohatě stačilo prodat x kopií za $4. Kdyby to byla hra, kterou dělá, nevím, Blizzard, tak tě to bude stát €60 a budeš pít DLCčko za €60, nebo možná ještě za víc. Takže jde o to, že taky indie gaming v tomhle hodně zachraňuje celou herní scénu, kdy tu vznikají tituly, které nepotřebují miliardy, aby dokázali se zaplatit.
In gaming today? I cannot, obviously. Anyway, Vampire Survivors is a really basic but incredibly entertaining game. And hey, if you get tired of it, there's a ton of copycats to try out instead. And a lot of those are pretty good too. For me though, the original's good enough. I'll pop into the thing and get addicted all over again every few weeks. Mechanically, it's not a deep game, but who really cares? Look at the flashing lights. Sometimes the flashing lights are all you need.
Yep.
And number 6 is Battle Brothers, where Vampire Survivors is endless positive reinforcement. Battle Brothers is the opposite. This game is brutal, random, and ruthless. And if you want to get anywhere, you're going to have to die a lot before you start understanding how any of it even works. The gameplay, kind of a cross between a tactical strategy game like Mountain Blade with a mean streak a mile wide. Like, I'm not highlighting a second game to combine Mountain Blade with. I'm saying it's if you combined that with a mean streak. You start off with your little company of mercenaries. You take on jobs, try to survive in this low fantasy, randomly generated setting. Death comes fast, and it comes often, which is how I remember my teens. Oh! Anyway, many players outright lose the second or third encounter. That's how ruthless the game is. Once you start to understand how the stats work and what you're meant to do in combat, everything gets a lot smoother. Doesn't get easy, though. In fact, it might make you more angry when you randomly lose your best guy on a 90% chance to miss attack roll.
Vypadá to jak Homam. Vypadá to jak Homam, akorát trošku s jinou, asi trošku s jiným gameplayem a jinou grafikou, no.
That's just the way it is. There's enough tactical depth here to keep players coming back, even when it's kicking your teeth in. You might call fans of the game gluttons for punishment, but when you finally start to turn things around and actually succeed, it's one of the most satisfying roguelikes out there. And number 5 is Deep Rock Galactic. This cooperative FPS mining game is so much more fun than the description makes it sound.
Tohle je zase jedna z těch her, na kterou taky se těším, no. Já akorát pořád poslouchám, jak Deep Rock Galactic je naprosto fenomenální a že to je lepší všechno. Kdo ví?
Even trying to explain the game makes it sound boring and samey, but it's extremely engaging, it's very unique, and most of all, it's a ton of fun. How this one works is you pick a class, select from a wide variety of different missions, each with their own objectives and challenges, then you explore a procedurally generated cave system. Sounds like an FPS Minecraft mod, but it's got a lot more going to it, believe me on that one. It's one of the best cooperative games out there. It's so well balanced and fun and satisfying. Every class feels unique and powerful. The environments are surprisingly varied for a bunch of randomly generated caves. And above all else, it's got one of the best, friendliest communities out there. It's tough. Like...
No ale jaký to má, jako to tam má endgameu? Jako o čem to vlastně je? Jako to, že těžíš až zabíjíš mobky, to já chápu, ale tak co je ten ultimátní cíl Deep Rock Galacticu?
I'm not gonna say it's impossible, but even when you fail a mission, it feels like you accomplish something. It's a game you can easily waste hundreds of hours on. It just doesn't get boring. And number 4, it's Dead Cells.
Těžíš a zabíjíš a to je všechno? Huh, what the fuck?
And this is another game I haven't really gotten to talk about at the length that I would like to. But it fortunately did get enough attention during its primary life cycle. Like, I don't want to act like this one hasn't gotten its due. I just am happy to get to talk about it and maybe persuade some people who haven't tried it to do so.
A má Little Company nějaký cíl? No, nevím, proč zmiňuješ Little Company, ale tak jestli to chápu správně, tak Little Company je o tom, že ty potřebuješ přežít na té mapě a dojít někam, ne? Tak proto se ptám na to, jaký má cíl ten Deep Rock Galactic. Mně to přijde zvláštní, že tam není jako žádný end, nic takového, jo.
So, it was kind of one of the first in this big indie roguelike boom. And it's still one of the best because they keep adding stuff to it. Like, it's probably one of the most feature-rich roguelikes of all time. It's absolutely bursting with content. Hell, they basically added a new game on top of it with the Castlevania DLC, and there's so much to dig into there. The side-scrolling action platformer is just relentlessly fast and intense, and that's the thing that stands out about it to me, just how quick and deadly it can be. Once you get good at it, you can dash through the levels in seconds, but you can also be like me and carefully scope out every enemy encounter to avoid getting killed randomly.
Mám hrozný strach z těch Dead Cells kvůli tomu, že to bude podle mě podobně dlouhý jako Baldury a to si nejsem jistý, jestli zvládnu.
Still end up dying anyway. I never claimed to be good at Dead Cells. I just said I like it. It's actually the case with a lot of games. But, you know, compared to a lot of roguelike games, especially now, Dead Cells really isn't that tough. It gets tougher on higher difficulties, and that's where the game really gets interesting. But if you just want to play a fun game, you don't have to make things hard on yourself. A lot of the pain in this game is self-inflicted. It's one of those games that's fun to challenge yourself in, though, and you can spend a lot of time doing it. And number 3 is 7 Days to Die, the elevator pitch, Minecraft crossed with zombie survival. But that's also selling it pretty short. The thing I really like about 7 Days to Die is it's a huge map filled with interesting points to explore. That's the thing that keeps me coming back. On top of the challenging
Zajímavý. O téhle hře jsem akorát slyšel to, že je mrtvá a že to nemá smysl ani zkoušet.
Survival gameplay, and that's what really makes it stand out. The base game is a lot of fun, even if it's another perpetually in early access kind of game. There's still a ton of stuff to get up to inside of it, and it's one of the best survival games out there to play with friends. Its simulation gameplay is a lot more sophisticated than Minecraft, but one thing it does have in common is that there are a lot of mods. Like, there's tons of ways to tweak the gameplay and make it more unique, so to speak, and a lot of them are pretty impressive. I've spent quite a few hours messing around with this game, just playing the base game, but the mod scene is absolutely crazy. Extremely impressive stuff out there.
Pořádku.
And number 2 is Stellaris. Listen, you can put any Paradox game here. Europa Universalis 4, Hearts of Iron 4. Like, these are all massive time stealers that can easily become forever games. But let's focus on Stellaris, their 4X space game. Like all Paradox games, a grand strategy.
Je strašlivý vidět to, jak všechny tyhle hry jsou strašně podobné a zároveň každá úplně jiná. Já bych jednoho dne opravdu chtěl vidět někoho, kdo je schopný objektivně rozebrat a posoudit kvalitu těch her. Protože já pořád jenom slyším, že Europa Universalis je neskutečná, Hearts of Iron je neskutečný a tak dále. To je blbost. Jakoby ty hry nemůžou být dokonalý v tom, co dělají, protože tady je ještě jako poměrně široký spektrum porovnatelných titulů, který to dělají taky a dělají to trochu jinak.
Is just a means to generate stories, and Stellaris pushes procedural storytelling more than any other game in their catalog. That can make it a somewhat divisive game because certain mechanics are pretty bare bones when it came out, and you really need to get at least some of the fairly expensive DLC to get the most out of the game. But if you're willing to invest in it, there is a well of deep strategic gameplay to dig into. You don't even have to play the regular game, though, if you want to spend an infinite amount of time with it. Just play the mods. There's a ton of them, and they're practically retail quality. Like, there's a Star Trek mod for this game.
Co je bože tohleto? Sakura Stellaris. The Sakura girls have arrived to Stellaris. 150 CG loading screenů a 150 lídrů a sexy K-pop hudba.
Game that's better than the actual commercially available Star Trek game put out by Paradox. With mods, this game isn't just one massive game, it's a ton of games.
Co skoro tím, že ještě Baldur's Gate nemají pořád nějaký anime mod.
And finally, at number 1, it's RimWorld. This colony build...
Ano, je to tak. Přišla Karlach a řekla ajaja. Pak jsem to vypnul, odinstaloval a šel jsem dál. V pořádku.
Is like if you cross Prison Architect with Dwarf
Tak
Fortress.
jenom bych rád řekl, že nebudu hrát RimWorld, jo. Vím, že to říkám u každého videa, kde je RimWorld, nebudu hrát RimWorld.
And like Stellaris, it's less of a deep strategy game, more of a sandbox to mess around with and have funny, unexpected things happen. The thing that makes RimWorld stand out compared to so many other strategy games is how much personality your colonists have. It's like an M-rated The Sims, where half of the time someone will flip out and go feral, civil wars start to break out, brutal power struggles take place, and you can interfere as much or as little as you want. The DLCs and mods make even more possibilities for the game, but in this case, the base game is more than enough to waste away your days. It's just endlessly entertaining building up a colony only to watch it inevitably decline and have everyone go crazy and kill each other.
A co Gothic? Ale u Gothicu je to těžší. Já se Gothic chci zahrát, no, ale úplně vím, jak to bude vypadat do streamu.
It's not a pretty game by any means, but it's so addictive that it's easy to look past. I have some bonus games for you. Most of them are obligatory mentions just because, I mean, they've been around forever, and this is their reputation.
No třeba Dwarf Fortress by tam měl být, že jo?
Let's start them off with The Binding of Isaac. It is truly an endless game. It just keeps going and going. They just keep updating it. Like, the amount of bosses, items, areas, it's all ridiculous. And there's so many different characters to play as. You're always trying something new. Lots of content keeps a game replayable. But there's also something...
Já bych rád neřekl, že Isaac je nekonečná hra, ale je pravda, že ta hra má třeba 1500 hodin kontentu, no. Je to nekonečně? Je to hodně. Je to opravdu jako hodně.
About Binding of Isaac that makes it an infinity game. The short run length, the simple but deep gameplay, the crazy variety of items and builds that make every run feel different. It's like the platonic ideal of a roguelike. Next is Stardew Valley, another one of those games that the devs just can't stop updating and people can't stop playing. It's a farm game, which sounds boring, but it's really addictive. The cycle of waking up, tending the farm, talking to villagers, completing jobs, and exploring the world is beyond satisfying. The repetition in this case is a positive, but the game gives you so much other stuff to do if you want. It's the kind of game that's impossible to put...
Je pravda jedna věc a to je to, že třeba na rozdíl od spousty jiných multiplayerových titulů, tak Stardew Valley má výbornou komunitu. Je to taková klasická, jak to říct, nekonfliktní skupina lidí, kteří akorát si chtějí jít prostě zahrát svou hru a to je celý. A těch lidí je spousta, že?
Put down, but you've always got a new goal or something to achieve, and it never takes too long for anything to happen. Like, it's a non-stop feedback loop that keeps you constantly engaging, even when you're doing the most mundane of things. The next one's an oldie but a goodie and an obvious one, Skyrim. What else needs to be said here? The game's plenty replayable on its own, but the mod scene is probably second to no other game. There's so many excellent mods that completely remake the game or massively improve some part of the gameplay, and messing around with the mods is still basically a game all its own. There's an alchemy to managing mods in Skyrim. You can spend hundreds of hours just staring at the mod manager, let alone playing the game. This will take your life from you if you allow it. And then finally, what's a bigger, of course, than Skyrim? Well, Minecraft. You can't not mention it in a list like this. It's got a mod scene that rivals Skyrim's. There are multiple massive mods that completely upend the game, and there's so much you can do with it that it's overwhelming. It's a game with infinite possibilities, like anything can be done in Minecraft, so I have to mention it. But that's all for today. Leave us a comment, let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is a courses subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications. And as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter @FalconTheHero. We'll see you next time right here on Game Ranks.
Já myslím, že to byl docela pěkný rozbor. V rámci toho, co ty hry dělají, tak každý má nějakou nekonečnou hru, kterou podle mě hraje a u který tráví neskutečně času. Na tohle se podívej okolo Skyrim modu. To asi se mi na to úplně koukat. Skyrim Ultima, to už jsem viděl. Vypadá ten Skyrim trochu jak Zaklinač 3 potom z RTX. Což je taky lehčí šílenství.